Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zipho Sikhakhane, and today I'm going to talk to you about leadership in the modern era. Let's see by a show of hands, how many leaders do we have in the room today? This is good. This is many. For those who didn't raise their hands, I have something to tell you. You are a leader too, because you know what? We are all leaders. By waking up this morning and making decisions about how you're going to lead your life today, you are being a leader. When you are directing your family, your friends, even your peers at work, you are actually leading. We are all leaders. I have a very personal relationship with leadership. I'm someone who's applied leadership in my own life. I come from the most impoverished parts of South Africa, and I managed to achieve much success in my career. I managed to get my education at one of the leading academic institutions in this continent. I received my MBA at Stanford, which is the top MBA program in the world, a grooming ground for some of the best leaders of our time. I've had the honor of working at the top management consulting firm in the world, or even the biggest retail group in the world. In a space of 10 years, I traveled to about 30 countries, and I worked in about 9 of them. And throughout all my experiences traveling and working around the world, I realized one important thing, and that is that the world has been wrong about leadership. Until recently, we've had it completely wrong. We think about leadership as this thing that is about the other. It's about how you lead them. And it's not so much about how you are leading yourself as an individual. We forget that when you are looking at the best models towards leadership, you don't think about the fact that you need to adapt it to your environment, to your context, to the people that you are leading. And today, that is what I'm going to be talking about. So, let's start with this idea of leading yourself. Now, if you go online and you look at the definition of leadership, what do you find? Well, it's something about leading other people or leading an organization, which might lead many to think that, oh, but it's not about me. And I'm here to tell you now, it is about you. It is about how you lead yourself effectively. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you cannot walk, how can you teach others how to walk? And so to be an effective leader, you need to first understand, how do you lead yourself? So how do you lead yourself? It's about asking yourself one important question. Why would others follow you? Why would others follow you? I mentioned that I went to Stanford because I was hungry to find out, how do you lead? And what I found there is we invested almost the whole time there trying to understand what makes you unique as an individual. What would make others follow you? We had whole classes dedicated to understanding how others perceive you. And so I encourage us to ask ourselves, why would others follow you? It's very simple. It's about understanding what makes you unique, what makes you exceptional, because that is what is going to make people follow you. So how do you find out what makes you unique? Be hungry for feedback. Crave it. It's the biggest gift that you can receive. But please, do one thing differently this time. Instead of doing what we normally do, when you listen to feedback, you kind of ignore the strengths, and then you write notes about weaknesses. No. I challenge you to focus on your strengths, because your strengths are going to make you exceptional. People are going to remember you for what makes you exceptional when they follow you. But go beyond that. And start thinking about the barriers that we put in our own path when you are trying to lead. The first of them is being this imposter. We try and bring this version of ourselves that we think is what a leader is supposed to be. No, no one is going to follow an imposter. They want you. They want an authentic version of yourself. What is that authentic version? It's that person sitting inside. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a coincidence that one of the most popular TED Talks, top 5 of all time, is by Brené Brown, and it's on this topic of authenticity and vulnerability. And she found that the most authentic and most wholehearted individuals, they were the happiest, and they led from a place of vulnerability. They were not scared to bring their true selves forward. They did not numb. They did not pretend. They were authentic. And I want to bring up this other point around inferiority complexes. We come from this continent that was previously forgotten about the world. And now many people are realizing that Africa is a region of great opportunity. It's now the second fastest growing region in the world, even though we are going through an economic global downturn. Yet we still carry those inferiorities from the past. More so in South Africa, where we come from a long history of oppression. And so even though we have our freedom now, many of us carry those inferiorities, and they stand in the way when we are trying to lead. I'm telling you now, if I didn't work through my own complexities and my own inferiorities, I would not have overcome the hurdles that are put for women in business, for people of color in business, for young people in business. And so I encourage you to work through your own complexes and find out what makes you unique. And then once you understand what that is, move on to my next point around adaptability. The world's leading approach on leaderships, they're there. They're good and they work. But you know what? Most of them come from the developed world. They come from the West, and yes, they work there. But they might not work as well in our own context, in a developing market context like our own. And so it's very important to think about how do you adapt that leadership approach to what would work for you here. A couple of years ago, I led some research where I surveyed over 100 business leaders across the African continent, trying to find out what kind of qualities stand out in leaders that make it in this region of the world. What did I find? The first thing is the power of visionaries. Visionaries are important here because you are painting a picture of something that people have not seen before. There's not even examples of some of the leading giants that are still to come out of this African continent. Pick MTN, for example. They are now one of the biggest telecoms giants in the world, and they come from a small country, South Africa. Do you think back then when they started, they had an example that they could lean on? No. And so they needed visionaries. Phuthuma Nhleko and his team needed to be the kind of visionaries that can paint something that has not existed yet before. The second thing I found in the research is the power of execution. Now, we all know that when you are coming up with a strategy, yes, it's important to have the best and cutting-edge strategy in the world. This is important in the West. But not in an emerging market context like our own, because we know execution is where things fall apart. I'll share an example. So I worked in retail in an international role where we'd go around to different countries, and we'll be implementing projects and comparing stories about how execution would work in different countries. One example, we're redesigning a section of the store, let's say. So you come to the store, you give them instructions, you demonstrate with them, start changing the shirts this way, and then you can carry on with the rest of the store. Give that instruction in China. You come back an hour later. Indeed, the guys have followed your instructions very well. However, they stopped with the shirts and they didn't continue after that. Why? Because in China, they need instructions. Go to Germany. Give the same instruction. Come back an hour later. What do you find? Well, they're still busy with the shirts, but they focused on accuracy. They want to get it to the good specifications that you said to them. In Germany, they care about accuracy. Then you come to South Africa. You give the same instruction, you come back an hour later, and indeed the guys actually have finished the shirts, and they've actually moved on to other parts of the store. However, they did not do it to the specifications that you gave them. If anything, they've decided on their own way, and it's much better. The point I'm trying to make is that when you're leading in a context like ours, it's important to understand that, therefore, you need to understand that you need to adapt to the local environment. This is critical, and this is important. And in South Africa, people want buy-in, right? People want to understand what is going on, engage them in the plan so that they can execute it effectively. There's much more depth into what I'm talking about today. And when we had more time, I can explain it in more detail. But the moral of the story is you need to understand what makes you unique so that you can lead effectively. And then you need to understand that when you are leading, you need to adapt to your environment. The time is long gone for all of us to have this passive relationship with leadership. You need to lean into it and embrace it and lead from a place of greatness. And I'll conclude by challenging you all to remember that as human beings, we are here on earth for such a limited period of time, such a short period of time. And therefore, you need to ask yourself, what is the legacy that you are going to have while you are here on earth? I know what my legacy is. And it's living my passion of helping individuals and business leaders realize their growth potential. This translates into how I spend my time as a leader, as a speaker, as a writer, and as an advisor. And so I challenge you all today to think about, what is the legacy that I am going to have? And how does this translate into how I spend my time today? Thank you.